night is the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Rangers Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Mackay, and we're here to have a wee look at the board and potential solutions tonight. Firstly, on my left, on my left is Kev. Kev, how you doing, mate?
Doing well. Just back for Turkey, so feeling refreshed and ready to go.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Stevie, how you doing, mate?
I'm great, mate. Thanks for asking. How's yourself?
Aye, not bad, not bad. And Dean, as usual, on a Thursday night, sitting munching his tea. How are you getting on, pal?
All good, mate. Thanks very much.
Happy days, happy days. So, in the night, we're going to have a look at Graham Souness's comments with TalkSport, which kind of sparked this idea in my head. Not really going to talk about it too much, but we're going to offer up a solution in terms of football-minded people that we could potentially look at the board, look at joining the board. Kevin, Stevie have done a good bit of work on it. Maybe touch upon ahead of youth development as well. Excuse me. Then we'll watch a wee bit about Edu Arsenal and look at Arsenal's hierarchy. There's some really, really good comments for Edu. Then we'll have a quick look at other clubs' models and see how we can compare it to our own, because I feel as if it's just Neil Scotland's been a bit of a one-man band just now, and I think it needs to be looked at in terms of who's making decisions off the park. So, firstly, I'm going to share my screen and we'll watch Graham Souness's comments on TalkSport.
Titles in the last 13 years, claiming the last 3 in a trot. Is there anything to, and I know I'm putting this to the former player manager of Glasgow Rangers, is there anything to persuade you that anything is going to change this season and that Celtic will end up with that Premier League title,
Jim,
with green bows on the trophy?
We've played 2 games. You cannot make that call. I'm a bit disappointed that we have not bought more and better players. The manager will be. He signed a new contract. That mystified. Before you do that, you'd like some guarantees that you're going to get some more players in. I like what he did last year, and I think if he's given help, then it would not be impossible for Rangers to win the league. Obviously, Celtic are favourites. They have made a good start. I think the Kilmarnock lose again at the weekend.
They lost again, yeah.
Yeah, so that wasn't the hardest start for them. Tynecastle is a hard place for any Rangers team or anyone going to Edinburgh. So no, I'm not. I wouldn't concede anything at this time. I think it's still very much game on. We had a discussion, quite a heated discussion last year, where I don't feel there's a million miles between the 2 teams. The results would tell you that.
You still feel that?
Yeah, but I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that we have not strengthened. And I'm also, okay, you can factor in as well that we're going to play a large part of our early games, or all our early games, at Hampden. But then again, Hampden is such a big deal. You know, we're used to playing there.
The thing is, from a Rangers viewpoint, Graham, it looks as though Celtic are getting further and further away.
I don't see it that way.
But also as to who they could get. Look at the Matt O'Reilly situation. If they end up getting what they want, Europe as well.
What have they spent this year?
James Bisgrove, that I mentioned earlier, the chief executive, disappears for Saudi Arabia. And all of a sudden, the decision-making process is not as strong at Rangers as it probably once was. Clement has nailed his colours to the mast and stays. But the task facing him
process
is immense, is it not?
So what was so great about the decision-making process? They put Michael Beale in the bleeding dugout.
No,
what was so great about that?
In that period, they did spend money that wasn't spent wisely. My concern is this is not me out for a job. Trust me, because that ship has sailed.
Has it
ship has sailed? Yeah.
Have you no longer got any interest in going back to Rangers?
No, that's been and gone. I worry that where is the football knowledge with the board? You know, and I'd say this to their face as they're sitting here. You know, I took part in the recruitment process with the new manager.
Well, someone has some knowledge because they employed a manager that you like.
Met the people who are running the football club, and who do they ask a question of? It's, you know,
well, they asked you last time, didn't they?
Well, I think the guy's a good manager, and given the right support, and I've said this, given the right support, we'll do well there.
Well, who else was in the mix when you went up there and you were asked for your opinion? They asked other people at the same time.
He's trying to set me up.
I'm asking you a question, matey.
It's like reading the Beano Dandy.
Viz, in your case.
Viz.
What are you trying to ask him?
I'm trying to, because Graham is going down the route, which is a well-trodden path that he likes to sprint on down every time he gets an opportunity. No one else has any knowledge besides football people, full stop. And I'm curious to see.
This has come from managers.
I know. That's wonderful, Gray. Let's move on to the question I was going to ask, right? Which is the basic recruitment criteria that Rangers have is being deployed by who? Because they selected a manager, which you were, I believe, albeit slightly in favour of Frank Lampard, and then pivoted off that one when you saw Philip Clem come on through the door and he was doing quite well. But they must have some intellectual capital down there to be able to make decisions alongside the manager. Are you saying that they have none?
Yeah.
Really?
Right, so quite damning words for Graham Souness in that kind of interview with Simon Jordan and Jim Whitehair. So thanks to TalkSport for providing that. Right, what are we going to look at now? We're going to look at Director of Football and CEO roles. So thanks to Doug, who's in the comments, for doing an awful lot of work. This pod wouldn't be what it is without Doug's work. So he's defined a Director of Football role first. Director of Football, which Rangers do not have, is to lead the footballing departments, support delivery of priority targets, league title, UCL qualification and cups, create and implement high-level planning culture of club, work with head of academy and manager to bring through youth, work with the manager to deliver a successful transfer strategy, ongoing monitoring of transfer targets, including managers, deliver value for money and player contracts, oversee the sporting infrastructure. So it's not possible for Nils Coppin to run a recruitment team plus as well as do all that. Does anybody quickly want to come in on any of that? Does anybody disagree with any of that? Basically, that Nils Coppin cannot do all that in his job description, that we need a director of football?
Yeah, we do. I'll just go in first, lads. In my opinion, I'm of the sort of mindset that, you could have two people with the amount of responsibility that role brings. But obviously beggars can't be choosers, and we can't even get one in, let alone two. But it's the level of responsibility that role has is, it's fundamental to the to the success, to the club moving forward in the right direction. If that makes sense. But expecting one person to do, what Nils Coppin, it's crazy. And
I think Dean, I don't know if there's an expectation within the club to provide all that. No, Doug's come in and clarified it. No, he's director of football recruitment, right? That's Nils Coppin's job. So there's different aspects of that job that somebody else needs to come in and do. Now, does anybody else disagree that we don't need a director of football, or is everybody kind of the opinion that we do?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'd still be on the same page. I don't want to give any spoilers for later on in the show. I'm going to go on and talk about a certain club that have two people within similar roles that look after different things. They've got one that Nils Coppin was actually brought in to do, which was the more recruitment side of things. But then they also have another person that's in looking after the academy, the first team, and sort of planning for the future in terms of the football going forward. But I'll not have any spoilers. But yeah, I think it's probably too much to ask of Nils Coppin, if Rangers are even asking him to do two things, or if he is generally just looking after the recruitment and then no one else is really looking after the rest of it. Or you've maybe got John Bennett, who's doing all sorts at the moment with owner, chairman, CEO, loads of different stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. What we're talking about here is a chain of command. It needs to be much clearer. We definitely need both, like the director of football and a new CEO. There's no doubt about that.
Right. So let's move on to the CEO, right, and then we'll cover what Souness says and the kind of two roles that I think would fill the football-minded people that Souness is saying that's needed in the club. So, chief executive, they lead the organisation and deliver on a business plan, support delivery of priority targets, League Cup, UCL, Champions League qualification and Cup. So that also links in with the director of football. Grow the club financially and reputationally. Employ the director of football and head of academy, which are both vacant. Work with the director of football and director of football recruitment, Neil Scotty, and manage to deliver a successful transfer strategy, which I think is fair to say hasn't been happening. This transfer window is up for debate. We'll soon find out. Maximise success and income from Edmondson House and the sports bar that's still not built. Transparent and consistent communication with fan base. That also leaves a lot to be desired. Deliver on stadium expansion. So there's an awful lot in reading that. And just for anybody that's on Spotify, I'm reading it off a slide. That's why I'm reading it all point by point. So an awful lot of that kind of... Kev, do you think it's kind of fair to say that what's been happening with the board just now has been suffering because we don't have a CEO?
I think so. I think we're probably just asking too much of one or two people to try and carry out all these different things. And I think that's been the sort of major problem. I think that mixed in with the shambles with the stadium, which I imagine is causing a lot of stress and work for the board, along with trying to go through a massive rebuild. So I think there's maybe just a bit off more than what we can chew with not the right people in place.
Aye, definitely. Stevie, do you agree? Is there anything that you think a CEO could be doing additionally? Or could you take some of the role away? Like, could you define it a wee bit more?
I think, pretty much what you lifted is spot on. I wouldn't disagree with any of that, but I think in addition, they can have a bit more involvement in transfers with players. The examples going to come to later kind of illustrate that quite well in different levels of the game, both domestically and down south. These things are all intertwined. There's a relationship there between these roles, and the better that relationship, the better it is for the club. So yeah, we just need to get the proper skill set into these positions, and then the process becomes smoother. I know it seems really difficult and negative what's going on just now, but it's no forever. We're going to be back at Ibrox soon. These positions will get filled. Players will go out the door. Players will come in. And the board, we are changing the transfer strategy. I know we've only signed Barron, maybe Cortez, Diamandi for the first team, but our new strategies, it's too soon to say it's working or it's not working, but they're trying to do the right things. They're not getting 3-year contracts to guys above 30. So it's not all negative right now,
Aye, definitely, mate. Definitely. Dino, have you got anything you want to add to the CEO role?
No, just echoing what everyone's saying. I think it's quite synonymous across the fans that we all pretty much are aligned in what we think should happen. And it's one of them where it's a matter of urgency to obviously get these positions filled, but you don't want to be making the wrong appointments just to fill the role. And I think as fans, we can be very fickle in such sort of circumstances. So we've just got to really have faith and trust the process.
Definitely, mate. Definitely, right. So I'm going to take this away. This is the current club hierarchy. So the chairman, board of directors, chief executive officer, which is vacant, director of football, which is vacant. We've got a finance officer, human resources and marketing. Let's not touch upon the marketing tonight. We've got a manager and we've got Nils Coppin. Then we've got backroom staff in the medical department. So there's 2 massive vacancies in there, plus with the marketing advisor role now being vacant as well. So I think it's fair to say what's been happening at the club has been happening because of these gaps, right? Does anybody want to come in on any of that? Does anybody feel as if we could have been more transparent, that the stadium would have been avoided if we had people in these roles? Kev, I'll come to you first.
It's really hard to tell if we had people in this role if the stadium would have been quicker or not in terms of the building work being completed. I think there's obviously a lot of blame being put onto the board around the delays that had taken place. It's really hard to tell. I think in terms of the transfers, I think that could have maybe been progressed slightly quicker, with players out and players in. I know we're going to show some clips on Edu later on at Arsenal and the sort of work that he put in. I actually seen something come up on TikTok, I think it was yesterday or today potentially, around like work around trying to get Aubameyang out the door. I think if you had someone in that position, we might have been quite quick to get maybe moves for the likes of Cantwell or Hadji or Scott Wright or whoever else has been linked with a move away. If we had people in that role, in terms of the stadium build, I want to say I've got no idea. I think everyone agrees we could have been a lot more stronger with our communication around what was going on. It took a long time to try and get that message out to the fans, which John Bennett eventually did do in the end. But in terms of if we had a chief exec in place, would that have been quicker? Yeah, I don't know.
That's fair. Stevie, have you got any thoughts?
I think it would have been quicker, to be fair. Just looking at the CEOs at other clubs, they're taking it, they're grabbing the bull by the horns. They're taking ownership. They're making sure things are happening. We've spoken about it before, Scotty. Like, we are lacking leadership from the top down, and that transpires into what we're looking at now. These wrong decisions, as Dean mentioned, that there've been too many over the last 2 and a bit years. It was only just 30 years ago we're in the Europa League final. The second biggest club tournament in the world. We're in the final, and they were like talking about the stadium and stuff. So yeah, if we had better leadership, stuff like that, it shouldn't be an issue. So let's make sure, let's stop making these wrong appointments and wrong decisions and start making the right decisions. It's so important now.
Dino, where do you come in on it? Just in general, where you at? How are you feeling so far?
To be quite honest, it's kind of like what I was like before we won the league and things like that, and there was all these things that were happening, and I guess when there's no success, everything gets magnified, doesn't it? So because there's no success, then our attention then lies on the negative, and then so that's more, we're just more aware of it. So I just want us to start being successful, but it needs to be stripped back to the founds and rebuilt for us to be successful. And you didn't get time at Rangers, and Rangers fans didn't have patience. So that's always going to erupt. So I just have to be positive and think that we are going to get the right people in. And I'm all for the Rangers fan coming in and whatnot, but if they didn't have that football brain, if they didn't have that brain, I don't care what team they support. That's where I'm at with things, to be quite honest with you.
Can I come in really quickly there, Scotty? Dino's just hit the nail on the head. It's like we need to show more patience now than ever. We need to back the manager. 100%. Just get behind the team. I'm not saying don't give constructive criticism or solutions like we're doing now, but we're looking at reset our mindset and just get behind the team. Almost, I don't want to say right off the season because you still want to get your best, but the manager deserves, time. He absolutely deserves that.
Definitely.
Probably just to echo what Stevie's saying there as well. John Bennett was saying that we're moving away from that chopping and changing managers every season just when we start to play poorly. Granted, we don't look great on the pitch at the moment, but when you're going through any team that's going through like a normal rebuild, it takes time. I think too many people are comparing it to Celtic's rebuild when Ange Postecoglou came in, but they had much more money to spend than us at the time, and they invested anywhere between 20 to 25 million in that squad to get them where it is. When you look at what Clement's had to spend and the sort of rubbish that he still had to deal with, it is going to take time. Stevie was also mentioning about we seem to be moving in the right direction in terms of who we're bringing in. Again, time will tell that whether they work out to be good or not, but they've all been relatively low risk, low fees, more than likely low wages. And a lot of people are saying it's we're downsizing rather than rebuilding. I think it's about a mix of both. We had to do both. We had people on too much money that were at an age where they were coming to Rangers for the last payday. And I'm glad to see that we're moving away from these types of transfers. We've avoided the English Championship, which has been amazing to see. and we're trying to sign players from abroad. Again, we'll touch on it later, how other clubs get a very good amount of success from recruiting from leagues that aren't known as top leagues, but being able to get the best out of them, making a good amount of money, which would really fit with what we're trying to do in the player trading model. But will come with patience. It might mean it's not going to be a successful season this year, but like at least if you're building for the future and it's something to like try and buy into, again, just with that sort of sense of leadership for the top though, and communicating well to the fans around what these steps actually look like, how it's going to start to pan out. But I think it's going to be a bit of give and take between the fans and the club, to be fair. I think there definitely needs to be that patience there for us to buy into it, because the fans can't put that pressure on the board to then make rash decisions at times, which they need to, I suppose, from their point of view, need to stay strong and not just give in to the sort of fan pressure and the whole come on out stuff that you're seeing all over Twitter at the moment, because it's not the right thing to do.
No, that's not going to happen. So we're here to try and figure out solutions on how things are going to move forward and get better. From a fan perspective, but also but we're going to hope to see the club doing in the coming months. Quickly on why we're doing this tonight in terms of Souness's comments, Stevie, I'm going to come to you first, right? Now, used to be when I was growing up, you didn't need to worry about how Rangers were getting run off the park. And then the banter years, etc., all came, and it's just been everybody's an expert in it now, right? Everybody, as a fan base, everybody thinks that they know which should be happening and which shouldn't be happening behind the club. Now, do you think Souness is right in what he's saying in terms of we need football people on the board? Yeah, I do, to an extent. Not like everybody, but I want a presence there. You know, somebody who's got a bit of football acumen almost. I was kind of looking through the guys that are there on the board, like the non-exec directors, and I mean that, you know, their background's pretty amazing. You look at all these like equity firms that they work for, but what they're actually doing for the club, you know, in the actual running of the football club sense. Like one guy that springs to mind for me, I've mentioned it before in our chat, is like Peterborough United. Barry Fry, he's still their director of football, and he's still there. He's been in that club for like 50 years or something. You know, he's just probably. But you know what I mean? That's somebody who's been in football for such a long time. He knows every wrinkle of the game. You know, they get guys like Ivan Toney. They pluck them for like non-league, and then they make a profit. I'm not saying that Rangers and Peterborough are like comparable, but you know, it's having that football knowledge on there. Like Souness, I mean, I don't always agree with Souness, to be fair, but there I think he's spot on. It's like totally, you rip Simon Jordan to pieces there for me. We need somebody, like I say, even somebody younger. Like we've had him on here, Kevin Thompson. Whenever I listen to him speak about football, he's such a good knowledge. You know, he's so grounded, and he's that link to the past, like Walter Smith. He always spoke about the standards. Even somebody like that to kind of bridge the gap between the board and the management team and the actual football club. I think somebody like that would be really positive. I'm not saying definitely him, but you know, that's the kind of guy you want. Dino, come to you on it now. What was your take on the whole kind of segment between Simon Jordan and Graham Souness? Do you agree with Souness, or do you think that Simon Jordan's got some decent points in it? You're on mute.
Obviously. I agree with Souness to the point that football men should be on the board, and that's kind of why I said it doesn't matter what team these guys support or have allegiances to, as long as they can come in and improve my club, I don't really care. However, there's some points I did think that Simon Jordan did make that were valid, but as Kev, you'd said in the chat there, he's just a wind-up merchant, and, you know, kind of like somebody else in the media that just says things to get a reaction. So, and he was quite patronising to Souness as well. Like, do you know, so it's just for views, it's for clicks, it's for bites. Let's be honest, he's very well media trained, but you can't negate the fact that he does actually have some valid points. But Souness is bang on in terms of us needing football people on the board in whatever capacity, because having all these businessmen, you just alluded to, Stevie, that all these businessmen that really have got no really clue about perhaps football in terms of people like your Kevin Thompsons or whomever to come into the club, and that's exactly what we need. And if we get linked to somebody or somebody's, this and the next thing, or they're with this team, they've said this, that, I really don't care. As long as they just come in and make my football club better, that's all I'm bothered about.
I think we all want to get back to a place where we don't need to worry about the club off the pitch anymore, don't we? I think that's kind of
that's it.
Across the floor that needs to be dealt with the people in the club and the fans just get what they demand, which is a bare minimum expectation of some communication, etc. That all needs to improve. I think we're fair to say that. Nick Larwood, Gail, head of youth development. Just since you've asked that question, I would get Kevin Thompson, head of youth development. Kev, where do you stand on the whole football people and director of FitBut and CEO? Because with James Bisgrove, who was good at putting buildings around about Ibrox in terms of like generating revenue, but as a CEO, I think there was some things that kind of left a lot to be desired. I think that's fair to say.
I seen Ian post a comment there about football people being on the board, and not a lot of clubs have got football people on a CEO level. I'm not sure if when Souness has mentioned it, how I've taken Souness's point wasn't necessarily someone that's played for Rangers or played football. I think it's just people that have actually worked with football clubs already is who we look to try and get in as a CEO. So I think some of the ones that we're going to talk about later on is like Alan Burrows, for example, or the ones from other football clubs and maybe recruiting them into our club to be CEO. Granted, they haven't played football before, but these are, if you use Alan Burrows as an example, he's been involved within football from, I think, like 2007, something like that. So, like, they've got a wealth of knowledge around how football clubs should be run, rather than maybe having, like, a James Bisgrove, for example, that, yeah, great, he's got a lot of business experience, even being at a young age, but didn't have a great deal of football club running experience. And I don't know if that's maybe what Graham Souness was touching on, rather than maybe getting an ex-footballer in to come in as the chief executive. Because again, I think in these sort of roles, you need to know how a business operates. There's a lot of things we covered off what the expectations are of a CEO. A Kevin Thompson couldn't go into that role with zero experience on how to run a team. Yes, definitely looking at head academy stuff, but I think maybe looking at some of these guys that we'll go on and talk about would be perfect for the CEO. Involved in football, granted not played in it, but have a wealth of experience on how to run a club effectively.
Kev, do you think that Rangers need to be in a position now where we're looking to build relationships again within Scottish football? And is that behind your thinking on this appointment? Potential appointment?
Yeah, potentially. I think there's a couple on the list that we're going to talk about that have been involved in the SFA. I think they're on the professional game board, the two that out of the three that we've got on the slides. I think it's great. I think we'll probably start to build some form of relationship again with the SFA. I think the whole Hampden agreement's probably been effective. We're obviously very complimentary of the SFA and the SPFL for allowing us to get the use of Hampden. Granted, they're obviously going to get compensated for it well by the club, but I think we're starting to try and amend relationships there, because I think we probably rub some of the people up the wrong way in the SFA with a lot of different stuff that we've been doing over the last sort of 5-10 plus years. And yeah, I think these are the sort of candidates that I think are definitely within Rangers' grasp. Because I think ideally you're not going to be able to tout Ajax's CEO to come to Rangers. We probably need to look at ones that have been in the game for a long time, but within our wage structure that we can afford to pay these guys, and at the same time that they would actually be willing to take a step up to Rangers.
Stevie, what's your take on Alan Burrows, potential CEO, current Aberdeen CEO since February 23? He's got plenty of experience at Motherwell. Been involved in football since 2007. Started off within club communications. Yeah,
it's a good shout. Knows the league. To me, it's almost like a kind of reflection of the players that I want Rangers to sign. I want to sign Scottish players, players that know this league, and it almost translates onto like this position as well. He would be a really good candidate. Would really annoy Aberdeen fans as well if we could get somebody like him, so that'd be a wee bonus. But you look at what they've done the last year, some of the signings they've made, a lot of progress. Seems like they made a really good appointment with the manager, so a good shout potentially.
And probably just to add to that, Motherwell fans and Aberdeen fans have loved him. To be fair, right from the offset, and I think how many clubs actually look at their CEO as someone that they don't want to lose. Rangers and Celtic and a lot of other clubs can constantly complain about the board and the people that are within that board as well. Whereas I think if you get someone that's clearly well respected in any club that he's been with, he does loads of stuff, the stuff that I never had sent across to Doug, like all the sort of charity work and stuff that he gets involved in as well. Motherwell was like a very well run club through his time there. So he'd definitely be a strong candidate, I think.
Dino, where you at on Alan Burrows, mate?
Aye, he's as strong a candidate as I think you're going to get from our league. He ticks every box, doesn't he? And that's actually a really good point Kev just made about fans disliking members of their board and this and the next thing. Can't mind the last time I could tell you I like somebody at Ibrox. So, and this guy was. I didn't actually realise he was at Motherwell for so long, which is quite extraordinary. That's quite a long time for such a young guy to be a CEO of a SPFL club. So there's obviously a reason as to why he was there as long. Do you know? So that kind of signifies to me that he would, there's a real strong candidate there. That's a long time at a club like Motherwell, who. They're not necessarily doing, challenging for this and the next thing, but, they've got to be done the right way for them to stay in the league and things like that. So, probably with having limited resources, he's obviously done a very good job.
Kev, there's a question here for you. There's a difference between Motherwell, from Aberdeen, Motherwell, to Rangers trying to cope with the size and expectations of the club.
Look at Conor Barron since he's came in. I generally don't think that really matters, to be fair. I think if someone is capable to do a job, and they're capable to do the job, whether that's being with Dumbarton or Rangers, I think if you're good enough in that role, the expectations of these clubs will still be the same. If anything, he's just going to get more tools to be able to do better at the job with Rangers, because he'll have more finances, can compete for more trophies, all these different things that I'd imagine would motivate him. You're looking at Conor Barron, who probably wasn't even a regular starter at Aberdeen, has came in, he's been our best player. He's been our standout from pre-season onwards. So I think if people are coming in with the right mindset and we're having conversations with guys like Alan Burrows, if he is a candidate that we're looking at, which I really hope he is one of them, then there's no question that he would be able to come in and do a job. If you've got a skill set to do a certain job, you can apply that skill in any other club. You're just going to have better tools to be able to do it. So I don't think that would be something that would put me off, and I don't imagine it would be something that the board would look at as a potential put off. Again, we've had people in this position, using James Bisgrove as an example. He's came with zero experience in football, and we gave him the job, so I don't think it would be that big of a difference.
Right. Kev, on to your next suggestion, mate. I've not got a clue how to say his name, right? But it's Trine Mole, I'm going to say. Trine Hesseland Hopmole. Potential CEO. You take it away.
So I think this one's an interesting one, because I think I'm going to go on and talk about FC Nordisland like throughout the rest of this podcast, just because I think we were obviously really big on that whole player trading model, and I think that this club do it probably one of the best in Europe with the way their setup is run. I think we're touting to take their CEO off them. We're going to try and copy their style with the whole director of football positions. And I think we've actually suggested their ex-head of academy for ours as well later on in the pod. But she's the current CEO of Nordisland since 2022. She was the commercial co-CEO of Nordisland from 2021 to 2022. And then loads of experience within marketing and banking before that. Again, try not to give too much away, because we're going to talk about their sort of player trading model later on. But just to give a sort of small insight into it, they've obviously got a deal with the Right to Dream Academy in Africa, where they'd be able to tout the best African players, which they'd pick up for free because of the agreement that they've got with that setup, and then selling off for big fees. One of which we've benefited from with Diamonde, who started off in the Right to Dream Academy, went to Nordisland, and we've then signed him. But they've sold players on for 15, 19 million over the last couple of seasons. So clearly been able to strike a good business sense. In terms of that winning ability on the pitch, they probably just aren't there yet. I mean, me and Scotty were talking about this last night, and we were asking like how successful are they on the pitch. Probably not what we would be looking for as success, but they are a fairly new club in football terms. I think they're like 33 years old as a club. And when you look at the competition they're up against in that league, whether it be Copenhagen, Midtjylland or Brøndby, who are the sort of dominant teams in the Danish league, but they are way surpassing them as it stands in terms of like profit made from players, transfers and sales. So I'd imagine when you look at the sort of longevity of that, they will become successful, but it's just about sort of that patience and time. And that's what obviously Stevie was touching on later on today, and I think that's where it's important to show a bit of patience. I think with Scotland being a bit more in a more advantageous position compared to Nordisland, because it's really just a two-horse race in Scotland. It's either going to be Rangers or Celtic, whereas they're competing against a bit more teams than what we would be. So yeah, that's it on them.
Fair enough. We'll quickly move on to you and Stevie's kind of choice for one. It's Andrew McKinley. I think he's come out in the press and he's said they would like a job. I don't know if there's direct quotes, but I know there's been a link there. So he's current Hearts CEO since August 2020, member of Professional Game Board with the SFA since July 21. It was interim CEO of the SFA in 2018 for 4 months, COO for the SFA between 2016 and 2018, and then he done some CEO golf work between 2020 and 2020. So, Stevie, I'll lay this one to you. What did you pick Andrew McKinley for?
I've seen him interviewed, and he comes across brilliantly. It's like he seems to really enjoy his job. Like we all watched that interview with John Bennett, and it was like, do you even want to be there? Do you know what I mean? And Rangers, like having that job should be a privilege. And he just, he spoke about like setting up like regular meetings with the Hearts TV, like quarterly. So 4 times a year he's speaking to the fans, like good times or bad times. He's having that dialogue, and that gives you confidence from like a fan's perspective. To me, he's just got like a clear vision, and that improves that relationship. He also seemed really like knowledgeable when he was talking about players. He was like, we're not going to sign anybody in January. We might do a few pre-contracts. And you look at the guys they've signed, Jan Danda, free transfer for Ross County and Blair Spittle. He seemed to be quite involved. And they asked him about Shankland as well. He was like, no, we're absolutely not going to break our wage structure. I think Rangers really need somebody like that strong in that position. He's got to be like, right, this is how we're doing it. Come hell or high water, this is our like trading model, and we're going to stick to it, because he's thinking 2-3 years down the line how the club's going to look then. He's got the kind of like skills to do the job immediately, but also to think longer term. Even guys like that, was it Taylor? He looked really impressive. Vargas, they've got a really good kind of structure in place, and they made a profit last year. The Scottish team actually made a profit. The numbers. Kev's talking about that. Scandinavian, it's like numbers don't lie. It's like the finances support what they're doing, and Rangers really need to get. I know like nobody really cares about profit and loss, but at the end of the day, it is becoming more and more important. So we want to get on an even keel. And if that's right, if he wants the job, that's brilliant. Go get him. To me, I think he's my number one candidate. He knows the Scottish League. You've mentioned his CV there, SFA, Scottish golf. Building relationships. It just seems like a really smart appointment. Strength, at the top of the club, and he might, be the guy to actually lead the national football club going forward.
Stevie, just because of time, I'm going to bring up your next one. Paul Barber.
This is fantasy football, mate. I have no this is like the Lionel Messi of the CEOs. He's just. The guy's CV is incredible. He's done it for the FA, worked with the England team, with Spurs, and made them an absolute ton of money. Working with Daniel Levy, that must be difficult, but he's really absolutely blitzed it there. And he's been at Brighton since 2012. When you look at how they've come on, the structure they've put in place, it's just, that guy is like business, commercial, football. He's the whole package. If we can get somebody even just remotely like that, who has these contacts and has this football knowledge, that would be phenomenal.
Dino, what's your take on the 3 candidates that's been kind of put across? So just quickly touching upon them all. So firstly, you've got the CEO from Northland. What do you think? Business-minded brain, but got some experience in football. You're on mute.
That's a red card. No, I think there's going to be pros and cons to everybody, isn't there? And to be quite honest with you, I think there would be a challenge for her to come in.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be quite honest with you. I just think that there would be a challenge for her. Not to say that I don't think she'll be able to, because, you know, facts make me think that she would, you know, potentially do a good job. I just think that there would be challenges for her, and for that, I wouldn't think she'd be that strong a candidate. Moving on to Andrew McKinley. I don't think you get in those positions without being good at what you're doing and being adaptable to, you know, golf and football are two completely different sports, ran completely differently, obviously. So him having the ability to use his skill set in another role for a completely different sport is quite actually encouraging. So going from Hearts to Rangers, I think he'd be able to adapt quite easily. And I do like his assertiveness and basically I either jump on or get off type mindset. And I mean, I can't really remember the last time we had somebody like that. I thought at Ibrox, that's that figurehead that people, you know, will actually look up to and listen to and respect. And that's what somebody's actually essentially needing in that role. You can't have all these other people that are sticking daggers in you behind your back. You somebody that's going to be leading the chase.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Who's your favourite for a job? Who would you want in?
McKinley for me.
McKinley. I'm torn between Burrows and McKinley, to be honest with you. Stevie, what about you?
They're both really good candidates, but McKinley for me is a standout, mate. Like I say, just his communication is just excellent, as well as everything else. I think he's a whole package. Hopefully he wants it, because it is a big challenge. That's the thing. Whatever's coming in or whoever's coming in, it's a huge challenge. Like Rangers, but it's a huge club, you know, and there's so much potential there. So bring it on.
Can I just add something? You see, if he was to potentially come in, and they would be coming and making these changes, and maybe we wouldn't potentially agree to them, I would respect him more for being able to actually make the changes and, you know, and owning the decisions that he's making. And that's something that I think we've been starved of.
Definitely. Kev, what about you?
Probably similar to you, Scotty. I think it's a toss-up between Burrows and McKinley. Probably just edging slightly closer to Burrows. I know Stevie was talking about how that McKinley quarterly catches up with the fans or communicates with the fans. I think the massive background that Burrows has within the communication side, I think, is what we are crying out for as well. I think someone that's like can communicate effectively and takes pride in being able to do that and reach out to fans and try to get fans involved in everything that he wants to do, I think would be massive, along with having that wealth of experience within football. But again, if they were to announce that it was going to be McKinley tomorrow, I'd be buzzing with that as well. So, and probably the Nordisland one, I think probably just something what Stevie was saying about the Brighton one, that's probably like a dreamland one, to be fair as well. I probably can't see that being an appointment, although I do think that she would do very well. And if she could bring any experience along the way of how they go about setting up their partnerships with likes of Right to Dream Academies, etc., to make us a lot of money. Because again, although it might be a boring topic, having more money definitely benefits you, especially if you've got the right people in the right places to go and spend the money.
We'll quickly just kind of touch upon the director of football, because I'm conscious of time and we still need to get into the Edu and Arsenal and the player training model stuff. So we might run a wee bit over, but hopefully not too much. So we've got potential head of academy here for David Weir, but personally I think he would be better as a director of football with his experience down south. He's current technical director at Brighton since 2019. He had assistant manager roles at Rangers, Brentford, Nottingham Forest. Kev, what's your thinking behind this one?
I think with this one, to be fair, I think he probably would be an ideal candidate to get some form of role at Rangers. I know he's the technical director at Brighton. I think that is his title, but I know when I was looking into David Weir in terms of what he actually carries out at Brighton. Like, his sole purpose there is to look after the youth players that are out on loan. I think because of that sort of thing, it's more the younger players that he's looking after, is where my thinking was with the potential head of academy. I think he's obviously been a part of a successful Rangers team around that whole setting standards piece. So I think between him or Kevin Thompson for me would be like a toss-up of where I think they would be suited. I don't think that if you were to split that director of football role into two different roles, where you've got Niels Coppin, who's looking after the scouting stuff, and then maybe David Weir looking after the tying in with the head of youth academy, etc. But he's just not doing that currently at Brighton. He also doesn't have experience of doing that at Brighton yet. And it is more the younger players that he's working there. Although he's got that sporting director title, it is generally just he's working with youth players and players out on loan, catching up with them, etc. Because of how well run Brighton are, I think they've got people looking after all sorts of different things there. Hence why they're doing well. But yeah,
I think a Davy Weir would appease an awful lot of the support just now, coming in as a director of football, and then him appointing a head of academy and just completely taking control over that, giving him a reins. Stevie, you get any thoughts on it?
I mean, I kind of disagree with a word that you have just said. Those three names make absolute perfect sense to me. You know, especially the links to the club. Kevin Thompson, Davy Weir. You know, they've got those standards. They know the club. I appreciate what Kev said about Davy Weir's obviously in a slightly different role at Brighton, but you know, maybe he would want the ambition to actually take on more. You know, try and influence it a bit more widely. And I've said it before, I want Kevin Thompson back at Rangers in some capacity, so yeah, that makes sense. And one other name, it's maybe a bit left field, but do you know I'd like to see back in the staff? Alan McGregor. He's got standards, he's got real Rangers standards, so in some capacity, I wouldn't mind seeing him back at all.
Dino, where you at with the director of football, mate? And Davy Weir is a suggestion. On mute again.
Frustration. Sorry, lads. Sorry, viewers. Davy Weir. Any Davy Weir. For every single reason that everybody just mentioned. So I can't really add to that because I think we want Rangers people back in and around our club that know what the standards are that Walter had and things like that. Couldn't really get a more better role model, I think, than Walter Smith. Figure, to be at Rangers. So having players, ex-players that played under him to come in some sort of capacity and read roles, I think could be very beneficial in the future, not just short term but long term of our club.
Definitely. There was one other guy we kind of highlighted for the head of youth academy, and that's Gareth Henderby. He was the head of academies at FC Northumberland. He was technical director for Right a Dream Academy, and he was first team coach at Red Bull Salzburg, Red Bull Football in Ghana. For 2010-2011. So somebody of him or Kevin Thompson's ilk for the head of youth development would definitely be ideal. Right, moving on to Arsenal now. Arsenal are kind of going to put us in my place a wee bit here. So they've got their owner, they've got their board of directors, they've got their chief executive, director of football operations, and then they've got an operational divisions, sporting director, and then obviously first team manager Mikel Arteta and academy manager who's Per Mertesacker. Done a wee bit of digging today, and I seen a wee bit on a pod with Edu, and he's speaking about bringing out in terms of when he first went into the club, the job that he had to do. So I'm going to play that for everybody just now. Hold on, share screen. Here it is here. So this is Edu on when he'd first went in and the players that was
needed to study and skill up.
Oh, definitely.
But after 3 years working in the front office of the Brazilian national team next, you then rejoined Arsenal 2019, this time as the club's first ever technical director, later promoted to sporting director. And I want to say, this was a very different Arsenal. This squad you inherited honestly, it looked like it was log jammed. There were a lot of older players on large contracts that were perceived by the media to be almost impossible to move on. Tabloid media talked a lot about deadwood, and it's honestly been incredible to witness from the outside. You create change piece by piece, turning a squad that was considered lightweight at times into this young, swashbuckling iron fist of a collective that we now know. Edu, the art of squad building, setting the foundation. How do you approach it? Because no one's listening to this. You can tell us your secret.
No, I don't think it's secrets. I think when you live in the football world, sometimes you have to be simple on your decisions, and sometimes you have to make decisions, even if the decision is not popular or unpopular. You have to be very strong on your ideas, what you believe, what is good for the club, what is good for the future of the club is and everything. So for me, there is some elements here in football which I always be with a lot of attention. Okay, I always started to see one squad when I enjoy, or when I see the squad, I started to see the squad balance, the positions, the age, the group, what we have. But there are three elements here which for me you have to be really aware. First of all, we have to see the age of the player, and then you have to see the salary of the player, and at the third, you have to see the performance of the player. So if you have a player over 26, 27 years old, you need attention. If his salary is high, you need attention. And if he's not performing, you're dead. Let's come back. If you have a player 27 years old, 28 years old, big salary, but he's performing, you can accept. What you cannot accept, if you have those three elements, and one of them, when over 28, you started to be uncomfortable, it's better to you, move on. Because maybe this player is blocking someone younger as assets to help you. So when I came into Arsenal, when I see all squads, with all my respect, almost everyone was over 26, 27, big salary is not performing. If we have those three elements, which club in the world wants to come here and buy one of our players? No one. So how you deal with that situation, when you have those situations in your hands, you have to be strong. And sometimes you have to make decisions. So or you go strong and try to make the decision to let those players go, or your project going to take, like, instead to take 3-4 years, going to take 7, 8, 9. So, and then unpopular decisions start to come, because most of the players they have those elements sometimes in the club. They have a fan base, they have the media which they love the players, but for the club it's not healthy sometimes to keep the players in that situation. I start when I see every single player in the squad with those characteristics, and then I say, guys, we have to clean the squad with all my respect, and that's to build again a new foundation here. And then from that foundation, we need to sign players younger, with less salary, with better future, and hungry to help us to go for where we want to go.
You've not done this alone.
Right, so that brings us on nicely to the player trading model and kind of where we're at amongst that. Stevie, I'm going to come to you first on it, because I know you've done a good bit of work on, I think you looked at Brighton and Brentford and teams like that, didn't you? So what's your take on what Edu's saying? Because I think it's kind of reinforced the need for patience concerning where we are just now, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you can apply almost every word to what he said there to Rangers. You know, I mean, it's almost like he was talking about Rangers. Like, he stepped obviously at a far lesser level, to be fair. You know, we've not got like the hundreds of millions that Arsenal have got, or the TV money or whatever. But you know, everything he said there, I think we're at the start of that journey almost. You know, the guys we've got rid in the summer, the guys who've left, they were our big earners on long contracts. They were all like 30 or above, like Roof, Borna, you know, even Goldson there recently. Essentially, that's what we're trying to do, but at a far kind of more like domestic Scottish level. So, yeah, that was great. Great to listen to him there. It spoke a lot of sense. And look at Arsenal now, since they've, you know, moved on, like say Aubameyang, you know, all those guys have basically been moved on, and it's taken them to. It's not like Arsenal's success has been overnight. Again, I'm not comparing Rangers to Arsenal because it's like apples and oranges. But essentially, that's what we're trying to do, which is why, as we've said, you know, the manager deserves everybody's patience and support, get behind the team, because it's not going to happen overnight. I've said this before, but to me, this is like when Gerrard first came in. That first season, it's like we're building again from scratch. You know, he had a bit more backing for Dave King, to be fair, so it was easier for him. So take that into consideration when, you know, you're watching the club this season.
Aye, definitely. And what about Brighton and Brentford?
Their structure's like tremendous. You know, they build organically. It's interesting. Kev was saying about Burrows at Aberdeen. You know how he's like really involved with like the fans and the community. Both Brentford and Brighton are the same. And they've got a lot of kind of accolades about, you know, how good they are in the local community. They're building stuff. You know, they're involving the fans. They've got a lot of schemes, and that helps the relationship over time. Rangers could really benefit with somebody who's going to bring that to the club as well, and also promote them from within. I looked a wee bit like Peterborough, and their CEO who had worked at the club for like 9 years in different roles. It was like, you know, there's progression. We almost need like a structure that really, you know, you can actually move up. It's going to take a lot of work, you know, and I feel like we are at the start of this journey, but we're Rangers Football Club, you know. It's like there's a lot of potential there. We're a great club. So just, you know, let's make it happen. You're on mute, Scotty.
Oh, here I'm doing it now. Dean, you're rubbing off on me, my man. Kev, there's a comment up there saying we should be looking at Bruges, Copenhagen, and how they're run. I think you'd a wee looking at Copenhagen, didn't you?
Copenhagen probably on a slightly similar level to Nordersland in terms of what they try and do, where they seem to promote a lot of people for their youth academy every single year, which is great, and then try and either play them or sell them on in future. But also just like buy really cheap and sell them really high. I suppose the only difference between them and Nordersland is that Copenhagen actually win titles fairly consistently. I know they've won 2 league titles at the last 3. They did lose it last year to Midtjylland. I think that did go down quite close towards the end of the season. But I think, we definitely are seeming to be moving in the right direction. A lot of people were making comment there around how Niels Koppen and Clement have been saying all these similar things to what Edu was just saying in that clip there. And it's funny, just while Stevie was talking there, I take a quick jump to look at Arsenal's first starting 11 under Arteta, and there's only one of them there that still plays with them. And that's Saka, and he was playing him at left back, so he doesn't even play in that position anymore. But probably they're in a very similar situation to what we once were. Obviously, on a completely different scale in terms of finances, but they got rid of the likes of Socrates, David Luiz, Ozil, Lacazette, Aubameyang, all from that original lineup that he had, all big money players, all aging, and then replaced that with like a lot more youthful players within the squad and a lot less wages, and probably that hunger element, which I think you could get with the younger players. Again, I'll use Connor Barron as an example. Young, Scottish, hungry, cheap in wages, picked him up on a free transfer or development fee. I think they are the players that can sort of take us forward and that we can make money off of in the future. I think it's important to maybe get the balance right. I think probably what the likes of like Copenhagen do or Nordersland do, they'll get a bit of a mixture in terms of who they're signing. They will get the best young talent from their league, but they'll also branch out and like pick up players from maybe some of these countries that aren't well known. Maybe this is, we seem to be linked. I know we've got Egerman already from Morocco. We seem to have a couple other links with Morocco. Is that something that when we went to these sort of scouting conventions, is this new markets that we're trying to actually shop in, that we can try and strike deals with sort of good young up and coming talent that we can sort of build for the future? But a lot of that will come with patience around when do they come into the team. Where obviously Egerman, apologies if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, I know people are getting frustrated at why he's not playing, but that's probably one that is a project signing, is one for the future. And it's just really try to get the balance right between, definitely get some of the best Scottish talent, but also like branch out and look elsewhere. We don't need to just sign players that we know who they are. Mentioning Celtic again, they obviously struck a good balance in getting a lot of players for the Asian market. Obviously worked out well for them because they had a good understanding of it. I think if you're able to go away and buy players from maybe lesser known leagues at a cheap fee but still have great talent, and Rangers can be used as that sort of stepping stone to the Premier League, which we know near enough every single football player wants to go and play there. But it's just about being smart with our business.
Dino, just a kind of off-the-cuff question. What role do you think needs filled first? Do you think we need a CEO or do you think we need a director of footballing?
A CEO for me.
Aye.
Because leadership starts at the top.
Yep.
And we don't have any. So that's the fundamental reason for me that a CEO is the role that I want filled first.
Right, cool. Well, I think we've covered an awful lot of ground in an hour, lads. So thank you for coming on, and we'll give round one more time. Who you would like for CEO, director of Fitback, and just say your thanks. Kev, I'll come to you first.
I'm going to commit to Alan Burrows as my CEO. I would definitely get him in first. I think we covered off the roles and responsibility of what a CEO, and one of them is to employ the director of football. So it has to be a CEO first. And then for the technical director or sporting director, or however we want to call the director of football and what he's going to do, I am going to go with... Oh, that's a hard one. I'm going to go with the guy that was at Rodersland potentially to come in there. I think we're striking up the right sort of partnerships with his knowledge that he's got elsewhere. He probably will fit in well with one of the footballing side, but also around some new markets that we've maybe not visited before previously.
Magic. Well, thanks for coming on, Kev.
No worries, and thank you.
Stevie, what about you?
I'd love to see Andrew McKinley, new CEO, straight away. That's the most important, appointment we can make right now. Said it before, chain of command. We're almost like an oil tanker that's just drifting in the sea, and there's nobody actually at the wheel, and that needs to be stopped and taken control straight away. I can't see it happening, but I'd be delighted with Davy Weir, Kevin Thompson, and director of football role combined. And I'd love to see those three in there. And thanks for having me, mate. Pleasure as always.
No, no problem. Thanks for all your work, mate. It's appreciated. Dino, last but not least, mate, what about you? Who would you like to come in?
I'd honestly, just to be different, have a different opinion than Stevie, but I'm the exact same, mate. I can't really.
Great minds, Dino. Great minds think alike, mate.
And I echo everything that Stevie just said as the reasons. And thank you for having me on. It's been a good pod, lads. Thanks.
Oh, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hopefully we've gave a wee bit of insight into the roles and some potential candidates. I think for what John Bennett says in his last interview, we are quite down the road with a CEO. So what Rangers going to appoint somebody that's not been mentioned here? That would be typical Rangers. Let's hope they've got some footballing experience. And thank you for tuning in, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed it. And remember, every night is Rangers Journal night.